And he said, one day, and this is why we had this agreement long before you or I were born, that I would die, I would leave your life, and I would help you remember who you are and show you the light. And I'm like, okay. Now I remember, I just want to go home. And he goes, no, you're going to be helping people one day, and you're going to be helping people understand where we go, where we come from, that whole process. And I thought, this is silly. Like, I mean, literally all I think about is girls and guitars. So and I didn't make any sense. It was just gibberish to me, right? So I tried to walk past my dad again, and then he poked me in the forehead, and I woke up on the couch in my mom's basement. And I thought, okay, that was the most realistic experience I've ever had in my whole life. It was realer than real. That's all I can describe. It was realer than the life that I live now.
Shawn Leonard, welcome to Fear Unzipped. I am beyond delighted to have you here. In fact, I heard you about a year ago, and I said, got to have this man on my podcast. And our mutual friend, Susan Graw, connected us, which I am more than delighted about. So welcome to being here. And I just want to let the audience know a little bit about you. You're an Mi'kmaq Indigenous psychic medium. You have written a best-selling, fantastic book called Spirit Talker. You can see that. I highly recommend this book. You have a television show in Nova Scotia. Very successful.
In Canada.
Oh, in Canada. I'm sorry, in Canada. Yes, but you're from Nova Scotia.
I am from
and it's called Spirit Talker.
It is.
I wish we had it here, Shawn. Maybe it will come to the States. That would be lovely. I want to be able to watch that.
Well, I know you can watch it in the US in a few spaces. Like I know right now, Alex Ferrari of Next Level Soul has a thing called Next Level Soul TV.
Yes.
And, which is like really online spiritual streaming stuff.
Right.
Different movies and things. So he's got season 1 of Spirit Talker on there right now. So
that's so cool. Oh, that's so great.
Check out his platform and check it out. I think there's another one, but I can't. Fossum. I think Fossum is a free app that you can find out in the world somewhere, and you can watch it online there too.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you for that. That's going to be great.
Yeah.
So what I'd like to do is start with kind of your backstory before you got to what you're doing today. I think that story is fascinating. Would you share your life before you became this psychic medium that's world renowned?
Right. I mean, I never, grew up thinking somehow that, this was my journey in life in any way, or at any time did I ever think that. If anything, I was going to be a rock star.
Yeah.
Especially when I was a young teenager playing guitar and chasing girls and stuff like that. But I mean, when I was young, I, the most, pretty much just like everyone else, it was a little bit eccentric in some ways, I guess, that I think, for me, I was always interested in things that were kind of super or paranormal or, superstition in some way, or ghosts and apparitions of Mary to children. And so that's kind of what intrigued me when I was young. I was like, I guess the one kid that ran to my bookmobile when I was, because we didn't have a library where I grew up in Nova Scotia. We grew up in the country, and we actually had a bus that came that was a library. And when the bus came up on the hill where I lived in Elmsdale, Nova Scotia in Canada, I'd run out there and I'd rifle through all the books and ask the person that was out there, the librarian that was traveling with the bus, did they know anything about this subject, that subject, bending forks with your mind. I was like so into all of this. And there was very, very little, really, very, very little at that time in my life. I remember finding one book that I found amazing, by the way. It was, I think it was called Life After Life by Dr. Raymond Moody. And it was like one of the really kind of pioneering books out in the world about, people who have had near-death experiences. And so I read that. I was like totally amazed by that. And I did eventually order other books about apparitions of Mary to children and such. But again, once I got into my teenage years, I just pretty much didn't think about any of that anymore. It was other than play with the Ouija board with some friends and my aunt here and there, that I never thought, in regards, my interest changed, let's say, as a teenager, right? And then unfortunately, my father passed away. And then when my father passed away, that kind of shifted my awareness of life, let's say. And it's because when he passed, it was a year after that he passed that I had a profound visitation from him. And even though I had this visitation where I saw him, the light, and he gave me a message, and and I thought, with my father coming, I was like, the first thing he showed up in was like a long white robe, and I'm like, what the hell are you wearing, Dad? Like, why would you be? He would never be caught dead wearing this, literally. And here I'm seeing my dad in this long white robe and this beautiful, bright, like exorbitant light that is just undescribable. And all I could think about when I saw this space was, oh my God, that's home. It's where I've come from. This is where I belong. I'm returning back to my home. And I kept trying to walk past my father into the light. And he said, no, no, Shawn, you can't come here. I said, well, I just want to go check it out for like a few minutes. And he's like, no, and I was lying because I knew if I could get literally my little spiritual arse in there, you were never getting it back out because you'd have to pull me out there fighting because I just like, as great as life was, other than losing my father, I would have left. I would have left in a second and not thought again about the life that I had been living. And, but, we all have a purpose. We have a plan for life that we sometimes don't remember or consciously remember. And it unfolds as we step into the people that we are as we go through life. And that's kind of what my dad said. He says, well, you can't come because if you do, and then he showed me what it would look like for my mom if I was to journey home to the spirit world. And it was very hard. My mom would struggle about 7 more years of grief after losing my father. And it would be very profound and heavy. And she ideally would overcome it eventually, but it would be such a hardship for her. It was indescribable. And then he showed me what it would look like for my brother. Now, my brother would get over me much quicker and easier, but I mean, he was young, right? So it was his journey through grief would be much different than my mom's. But even though my dad showed me that, and I saw the light, and I thought, well, I still want to go because even if she suffers 7 years, she's going to be home with us one day anyway. Like she can only suffer so long, and then even if she dies, I mean, what's the worst case scenario? She comes home with us. So I was kind of like justifying it. And he's like, no, you don't get it. This is not her journey. That's not her purpose. And you have one yourself. And he said, one day, and this is why we had this agreement long before you or I were born, that I would die, I would leave your life, and I would help you remember who you are and show you the light. And I'm like, okay. Now I remember I just want to go home. And he goes, no, you're going to be helping people one day. And you're going to helping people understand where we go, where we come from, that whole process. And I thought, this is silly. Like, I mean, literally all I think about is girls and guitars. So, and I didn't make any sense. It was just gibberish to me, right? So I tried to walk past my dad again, and then he poked me on the forehead, and I woke up on the couch in my mom's basement. And I thought, okay, that was the most realistic experience I've ever had in my whole life. It was realer than real. That's all I can describe. It was realer than the life that I live now. And I couldn't wait to tell my mom. I got up and I said, Mom, you're not going to guess who visited me, who I saw last night? I said, I saw Dad. And I thought my mom would be really happy, but she wasn't. She was kind of angry because she was angry not with me. She was angry with my father. And the reason why she was angry with him is because, like, and what she said was, why did he come to you? And why didn't he come to me? Does he not know how much I'm struggling and how hard of a time I'm having it? And I got that from my dad when I saw him, that he did know, but he had to give her the space and time to heal because she was on her journey of grief, and he had to give her that space and time to kind of find herself. And when it was about 3 years later that she did have a visitation within herself, and it was very profound too. And then shortly after, she ended up meeting someone else named Larry and getting married. And, as I was growing up, I didn't have any, despite what my dad said, I just like threw it out the window. I just like, okay, this is just silliness. I would have built a burial life. I moved to Newfoundland where my grandma, who is Mi'kmaq, Indigenous Mi'kmaq from Newfoundland. And I moved there with her for a year because I finished school and I really didn't know who I was going to be or what I wanted to become. And I thought, well, maybe I'll be a fisherman because I used to do that with my grandfather who fished and my Uncle Sam. And I go and spend some time with my Uncle Sam fishing, and I really enjoyed it because you're outdoors, you're your own boss, and you work as hard as you want, really. I mean, so I really enjoyed it. So I went back and I fished with them for about a year. And then I had to make some big decisions because I think my grandmom knew that I was kind of like stuck in life in some way and really didn't know who I wanted to be or what else. And then an old girlfriend calls. And I was like, okay, so this girlfriend that I had in high school, that I was with for like 3 and a bit years, calls me, and she's in Ottawa, and she had a new, because she joined the military. That's one of the reasons why we broke up. And we were just going in different journeys of life. And so I was like, the minute she called, I was like, okay, I'm ready to go because this is awesome. But and I didn't even know what I was going to do in Ottawa. So I go home to Nova Scotia, packing, thinking about how I'm going to get to Ottawa and figure out my life with her. And then she calls me back and says, "No, Shawn, I've been drinking that night a little bit. I'm terribly sorry. I made a mistake. I think that you should stay where you are, and I don't want you to come." And it devastated me all over again. But here I am, thinking that I'm going to be a fisherman. In one phone call away, I'm gone. I'm back home living with my mom. And I'm like, okay, well, I better move out to. I had a couple of aunts in Calgary, Alberta, and it was a more booming economy out there. And so I moved out there to get a job. And then I met another lady, had a couple daughters, and then I was working very hard. And that's what I thought life was. Although I didn't really take good care of myself. Because at that age, I was like in my early 20s, and my wife was pregnant with my oldest daughter. And what happened was, because when you're becoming a parent, I thought, okay, well, maybe I should go get myself checked out. I smoked, I didn't exercise, I worked pretty hard, and I thought I better go get my cholesterol checked just to make sure that I'm okay, because my dad died at the age of 42. So I go get that checked. And I'm thinking, well, it's, I'm 23. I'm probably like invincible, right? So there's nothing going to be wrong with me. And then the doctor calls and says, I want to see you right away. I'm like, oh crap. That's never good, when the doctor wants to see you. So I went in to see the doctor. She sat down. She goes, Shawn, I'm looking at your cholesterol levels. And she goes, it's freaking high, really high for 23 years old. She goes, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? And she goes, do you smoke? I said, yeah, I smoke. I mean, what do you eat? And I told her what I ate. She says, that all has to change like today. She says, how old did your dad live to? 42? She goes, you won't live that long. You're not going to make it that long if you don't shift your life. And I'm like, okay. So I got the patch. I started exercising, and it scared me. It scared me. And I started to look at life a little bit different. I thought, because your mortality, comes into, check here. Like, how long am I going to be here for? Am I actually going to be a parent for my children? So I started exercising, and I went to the gym, and I got like incredibly fit, and, but it was more about balance for me in life at that time, because it wasn't just, my physical body, which I went to the gym pretty much every day. And then I quit smoking, and I went back to the doctor, and the doctor says, wow, I can't believe you're the same person. I can't believe this is you. Like, you've changed so much. Like, your cholesterol is like way, like, whatever you're doing, just keep doing it, she said. But I also started to meditate. I also started to go down the spiritual journey, because it was about balance again. Because I think in life, when you're living your best life, the best way you can do is be balanced in your body, in your mind, and in your spirit. And I didn't really have that much of a deep connection to my culture at that point of life, of being an Indigenous person. I didn't have a religious connection, but I just started to meditate and did a lot of visualized meditations. And I started speaking, not with like, Father or Hail Mary. And, I just started having conversations with the spirit world. Because I've watched elders, through my life, have, through different ceremonies, having just words, through the pipe ceremonies or what have you. And just, even though there's a certain protocol, sometimes they just speak to spirit. So I started to kind of embody that. And I started to speak with spirit and ask them to guide me and help me, and, just kind of, move me through life in a good way. And then things started getting kind of oddly weird for me. Because it was like, even though I was really taking care of my body, and I was like probably vibrating at a much higher level of energy too, through meditation and prayer and good mindset of life, that synchronicity started to kind of align more and more. and it got kind of like weird, like a little kind of strange. And I remember when this all started to happen because I've become more intuitive, let's say, not intentionally, but almost unintentionally, because of my new way of life, through my body, mind, and spirit. And so I would go to my ex-wife's work, and sometimes I would be waiting for her because she worked at Montana's in Calgary, Alberta. And so I'd go there a little bit early because, maybe I got free food sometimes. She would bring out a salad or something, for me as I was waiting. And I would vibe people out for fun, just for fun. I wasn't like being critical. I just, wonder what I think about this person, what I think about that person. I was like, okay, this guy kind of looks like I wonder if he's a drug dealer. He kind of got that vibe. He smells like weed, so maybe he's a drug dealer. And then I see another guy and I said, like, man, I just don't trust that guy. Like, I don't know if they should be trusting this guy with money. And then I'd see a couple that, that aren't together. And even though they weren't looking at each other, I felt like they were almost intentionally not looking at each other. I was like, wow, I bet you they're having an affair. So that was, I was just thoughts, I never put too much weight onto it. And so we're driving home and I'm telling my wife, like, what do you think of these people, by the way? I've been just checking out the people you kind of work with. And she goes, she says, geez, you're so judgmental people. I'm like, I'm not. I've said just this vibes that I thought I have here about these people. And she goes, well, that guy's father's a minister. He would never, sell drugs or anything like that. And, that guy's like, the most trustworthy person here. I've talked to him several times. I don't think there's ever been an issue with money missing. And, that couple, they're married to other people, never even seen them look at each other. And I said, that's my point. I've never, they're so awkwardly not looking at each other. That's just weird. And they seem to like purposely dislike each other. And so anyway, a week went by and she comes home and she goes, Shawn, I gotta guess what happened today. She goes, well, one, the cops came and busted the guy at work for dealing drugs. And the guy that you said was not trustworthy was fired for getting caught from stealing money from the till at the restaurant. And the couple that I've never seen them look at each other, for whatever reason, I walked in and they were kissing each other. And she goes, how the hell did you know that? I've worked with these people for years. I've never thought anything like this. And, I said, well, I don't really know anything. It's just a vibe, just a sense,
Yeah.
I just got good people skills. I'm just a good, I'm good at reading people's energy, right? So that's like a psychic ability that I didn't really know that I was refined or starting to refine even more. And I didn't really trust it anyway. And so anyway, I went home and probably within a week or two later, my wife comes over and she goes, guess what? There's this lady I've spoke to at work. Her name's Jen Syme. And she's an amazing lady. And, I work with her, Jen, right? She goes, yeah. She goes, well, she's coming over on Sunday and you're going to read her. I'm like, what? What do you mean I'm going to read her? I don't know how to read anybody. I'm just like, she goes, well, I've told her about what you've done. And she says, she thinks you have a gift and you don't know. And I'm like, well, I'm pretty sure I know, but I don't want to do this. She goes, well, she's already coming over. So you might as well just give it a go. So she comes over and we have dinner and then we sit around. And again, I'm sitting with Jen after dinner and she just kind of wants me to vibe her out a little bit, and she's giving me permission to kind of like get into her energy. And I'm like, well, I don't know, Jen, I'll do my best. And I said, well, do you know any guy named Dale? And she goes, well, I just met Dale. I met him like a few weeks ago. We've been hanging out every day and I really like Dale. And I was like, okay. And I'm like, how did I know that? Like, I'm thinking like, where did that come from? And then and then I started thinking about her writing a book and traveling and pets. And I'm like, I don't know how this all works together. But she goes, actually, me and Dale talked about this just the other day. What an amazing thing we could do if we could look after people's homes and travel and, stay in their homes while they're vacationing and care for their pets. And it'd be great business. I can work for my dad from anywhere. So we're going to do that. And I was like, oh, wow. Okay. This is, and then, and she goes, I'm working on a book now. And I'm like, really? She goes, yeah, it was titled The Masses Are Asses. And it's about serving people at a restaurant, for God's sakes.
That's a great title for that.
She's got an incredible sense of humor, by the way. And
Oh.
so I'm thinking, this is like, where is this coming from, right? How's this happening? And I thinking that somehow I'm like figuring this out in my brain. I'm a mind reader. She's thinking about this stuff. This is what this is. And, you know, I'm not certain like how I know these things, but I just know them. And then she goes, well, I really want you to make a connection to someone. And I'm like, what do you mean make a connection? Because I'm hoping that you could talk to somebody that I love. I'm like, pretty sure I can't do that. She says, I want you to try. You're way better than you know. And I think you can do this. I'm like, okay. So, and then, you know, I generically just said, well, I think your grandmom's with you, you know, and she goes, my grandmom's passed. I loved her. And I said, did you spend a lot of time with her, especially when you were young? These are kind of very general things, right? And then I described her. She goes, that's my grandmom. I'm like, really? I was surprised, right? And she goes, but that's not who I want to talk to. I'm like, really? Come on, this is like as good as it gets here. And she goes, just keep trying. There's somebody I've always wanted to talk to that I haven't been able to make a connection to. And so I'm like focusing, like staring, like I'm in a meditative state. My eyes are open, mind you, but because these other images that have kind of come to me is because they kind of just like subtle little faded images that flow through my brain. And then I see one flow through and it just kind of sits there for a second and then it's gone. And I see this young man and he's wearing a baseball uniform and he's got a baseball in his hand and he's bouncing it up and down in his hand. And he looks me in the eyes and he walks into a shed. I'm like, Jenna, I have no idea what the heck this is. And I told her and she cried. And she goes, oh my God, that's him. That's my best friend. We grew up playing and we played baseball together and we were like really good friends. And one night after a game, he unfortunately went home and he hung himself in the shed.
Uh.
And I've wanted to know all of my life since he's been gone if he's okay. And I didn't know really how to answer it. And I'm like, well, Jen, I feel like he's okay. Because I didn't want to hurt her. Because I'm like, I don't know. I said, I feel like he's okay. I feel like he's in a good space. And, you know, and that's where I kind of said that said, I'm still thinking in my head, like, how did that pop into my brain like that? Is it because she's thinking about him? Is it because she's thinking about the whole thing that happened with him? And somehow I'm like registering that in some subconscious level that I'm not understanding? Like telepathy of sorts, you know, that I'm not aware of that I'm getting. And then she left and she seemed very happy and I'm like very kind of puzzled. And then very shortly after, I have like other waitresses calling me. I'm like now got waitresses and waiters and friends of waitresses calling me to come see me. And I didn't know what to do with it, but I said, okay, well, I need to understand what is happening here. Like, what is this? What is happening? And so I decided to step into it a little bit. And I wanted to understand it more. So I started doing these sessions with people and it's more started to come and, you know, some things came that they didn't know, which is where it started to kind of intrigue me because I wasn't sure how am I getting something that they don't know? How is that? If I'm mind reading, you know, how am I supposed to get something that's not in their head? And then later they call me and say, Shawn, you were right. You were right. I didn't know this. And I'm like, really? And then I still wasn't convinced 100%. But there was one moment that I say that pivoted everything. And it was my moment with Orhan. It was a guy that I worked with. This time, now I worked in an office furniture company in Calgary, Alberta. I made office furniture, high-end office furniture. It was for a place called SMED International, which then was bought out by an American company called Hayworth, which is stationed out of Michigan. And so anyway, I worked for Hayworth. And I kind of worked my way up through the company from literally doing like cutting big boards and tabletops and everything like that in a big machine to working in the office and doing AutoCAD and bills of material and things like this, where I was like helping kind of design and put all the numbers in so people could like, you know, actually build the stuff. And I worked beside a guy who also did the same thing and he worked his way up through. And so anyway, I was telling him about my new found intuitions, my new insights. And man, did he, can you give me a hard time? Like, that's all I'll say is he gave me a really hard time. You know, that's what guys do. They usually give you really hard times about stuff that they don't understand, right? And we're young too, so probably in our early 30s at this point. And so I tell him, you know, what's going on. And he goes, okay, well, you need to come in and say, what's the lottery numbers today, Shawn? Maybe I should pick the numbers you're going to give me. So it'd be like, it got really old. So I stopped telling him things because I didn't want to give him more ammo. But one day I was sitting at work on my desk and typing away on my computer, doing AutoCAD and bills of material stuff. And I heard a voice within my mind, like a voice that I've heard before, but not the same one, but a voice. And it just said a name over and over and over again. I felt like I was almost like having a moment of mental illness because I didn't know where the voice was coming from in my mind. And it was just saying, Charlie, 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 Charlie. Mm. And I was so confused by why I was hearing this name Charlie repetitively. And I thought, okay, well, and I thought about it and I thought, okay, I looked at Orion and it kind of stopped. And I was like, okay, I bet you Orion's thinking about doing something with his buddy Charlie on the weekend. Because this is what I think it means. Charlie is a guy that he's doing something with on the weekend and he's thinking about it. And I'm able to get into that, right? Because again, I'm still thinking that this is somehow coming from people. And then I said, Orion, I got another really weird question for you. And I know you'd like these, but do you know a guy named Charlie? And he stopped and he turned and he goes, I used to know a guy named Charlie. And as soon as he said that, I saw a picture of a bar sign. And it was a bar in Calgary. It was called the Town and Country Bar. And he just went, blink. It's like, oh, that is so weird. Why? Why would your buddy that is, that you used to work with, that obviously has passed away, show me the Town and Country Bar sign? And he goes, oh my God, that's the last place he was seen alive. I'm like, what? He goes, yeah, that's where they last seen him. And they don't know what happened to him after that. He was found murdered at some other location. And I said, really? And then I started to see this house. And I saw this house and it had a little roof in the back. And it was the back side of the house. And I could see stairs going down into the basement, which seemed like a basement apartment. There was about 4 or 5 shadows in the backyard that I couldn't quite make out. But I could see him walking down the stairs. And then I felt like I got hit in the back of my head. And then that was all I saw. So I asked him, like, do you know anything about him going into a house and a backside entrance to a house into a basement, and anybody like blunt force trauma or anything like that? And he's like, no, I don't really know what happened to him. All I know is that he was last seen at the Town and Country Bar and they found him somewhere, and he was obviously murdered. I said, you sure you don't know anything about this house? And he's like, no, I don't know. And then he got really weirded out. Then he said, Shawn, who told you this? Who put you up to this? Like, somebody had to tell you this. Because now, even though this is like, I told him things that I had experienced in the past, now this is for him. And it became very real, very quick. And I weirded him out. Literally, he got defensive and angry with me. And I said, Orion, I'm not accusing you of anything. And he says, well, I wasn't even in the country when he was murdered. I don't know what you're trying to say. And I don't know where he was found. I was like in Bosnia at the time when this happened, but I heard that he died. And I'm like, I'm not accusing you. I said, but I need to know, do you know anything about this? He kept repeating, I do not know. And I said, he says, you should stop doing this. You should stop talking to me about this. This is not cool. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to upset you. He says, let's just drop it and we'll forget we talked about it. And he goes, okay. And he did. He went back to typing, got really awkward for a little while. And we just it was like he pretended it and we never had the conversation. And that's what we did. And then probably about a few weeks to a month went by. And I picked up a Calgary Sun paper, which I did pretty much every day. And the reason was because I'm Canadian, looking for the hockey scores. So I'm looking for hockey scores. And I'm flipping through, Yeah, I got into work. I used to work 12-hour shifts, 6 to 6. So I got in about, 5:30. I went to the gym ahead of the time. I get up like 4 o'clock to go to the gym, for God's sakes. That's how intense I was with everything. And then I'd have 15 minutes to eat my protein shake and rifle through the paper. And I was flipping through the paper, and then there was a story about an unsolved murder. And the story was about a guy named Charlie, nickname. Actually, his real name was Mannequin Achari, but his nickname was Charlie. And I'm like, okay. And then it showed a picture of the Town and Country Bar. that he was last seen alive there. Then he showed a picture of the house where he was found murdered with the little roof and the steps, and that he was found murdered in this downstairs basement apartment. I'm reading this like, you know, like, oh my God, this is everything that I was seeing. So Orion comes in and I put the paper down in front of him. And I said, man, I mean, you read this. And he reads it. And he goes, yeah. I said, you remember that little conversation we had there probably about 2 weeks to a month ago? Nope, don't remember it.
Oh,
I'm like, baloney. I mean, I said something else, but we'll just say baloney.
of course.
And so he goes, yeah, I do. Why? Why are you asking me this? What is this? Like, how is this important? I was like, look at the part about what I described with the house and the roof and the stairs going down. I said, and I need to know the honest to God's truth. Did you know this and admit it from me when I told you about it? Did you know about this story, this aspect of the story? He goes, I did not know. I swear to God to you, I did not know this aspect of the story. And he said, what? And then he got really angry again. And he said, why is this so important to you? Like, why is this such a big deal? I told you I wasn't in the country when this happened. I'm like, I'm not accusing you, Orion. But I really need to know, did you know this part of the story? Because again, I'm still kind of like skeptical, thinking that somehow this is coming from his brain.
Mm-hmm.
And like somehow I'm a mind reader, or somehow I'm pulling it from his head, right? And I don't know how I'm doing it. And he's like, I swear to God, I swear on my, and he's like, what is it going to take? I said, you got to swear on your family's life or something, like, because I need to know for sure. And he says, I'll swear on my wife's life. I'll never swear on my kid's life. He said, just in case.
Yeah.
But I can swear on my wife's life, and this is the truth. And he says, I swear on my wife's life. I swear on my own life. I did not know this. He goes, are you going to drop this? And I said, I promise you I will. And I said, how did you know this guy? He goes, well, I worked with him at the airport 8 years ago. And I'm like, and I said, and you thought somehow somebody would tell me this? Like, how am I supposed to even know or figure out that you worked with a guy at the airport 8 years ago whose name's not even Charlie, for God's sakes? That's his nickname. His real name's Manikamachari, and you called him Charlie, and that's what everybody called him, was Charlie. But I mean, how am I supposed to know all this and put it together and come to you and say, Orion, like, where would your name be mentioned anywhere connected to this? I said, do you know somebody here that you told this to? And he's like, no. So I think after that day, he shifted his ideals about my connections. And not only his, but most importantly, shifted mine. Because then I knew it wasn't coming from him.
Yeah.
It was coming, and I know it felt like it was coming from a spirit who was talking and communicating to me in a multitude of ways, through visual, through auditory, through sensory perception. And it was like all together, all these things kind of happening at once, that allowed me to realize that, oh my God, this is absolutely real. This is a language. This is like communication. And this is like how they communicate. I didn't have words for it, like clairvoyance, clairsentience, clairaudience, claircognizance. I didn't have words for stuff like that. It was just something that happened to me. And then I thought about what my dad said. I'm like, oh my God, my dad knew this. It was like my dad knew when he passed, when I met him at 16. And then I just stepped into it fully. I'm like, oh my God, I have to go deeper into this and explore it more. And I started doing little workshops with people. I started really doing a lot of readings, and I was so overwhelmed. I'd be booked for like 6 months straight. I'd be working because I still worked a day job. I'd be working all day and then come home doing a reading or two a night. And then I just burnt out, and then I had to take a step back because I couldn't let go of my job, because, my mom said, listen, you got to have a job that pays, your something as a backup that is going to give you a salary and is going to, you're going to have benefits, all these things. And so I was really fearful about letting my job go to do this. And then much later in life, like I said, when you're on a journey, spirit goes, you think you're not going to do this full time? Eh? How about we hurt your knee? How about that? How about you need a knee surgery? So I have to step off work. I'm now doing, and at this point, I'm now delivering mail for Canada Post, and my knee blew out. I need to have knee surgery, and still working days and doing readings on nights and weekends, and still kind of out of balance. And then my knee blew out again, and then I couldn't I couldn't really do that job anymore. And then I herniated a disc in my back, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to literally work midnights in mail sorting. Um, and I didn't want to do that. So I said, I quit. I'm gonna step into this like absolutely fully. And this is probably about maybe 12, 13 years ago now, that I just said, okay, this is what I'm going to do. Wholly, solely, is this what I'm going to do in life? And,
How old were
and
you then?
I was probably like, because I'm 53 now, probably like 41,
Yeah. Oh, so yeah.
maybe
Took a
40. This is when I really had to let go of my job and just say, okay, this is what I'm going to do.
I remember in your book you talked a lot about fear, like fear of your first wife, the divorcing, and you have an unbelievable story with her, with
Yes,
Marissa. Oh my God, that story just blew my mind. But fear is what holds a lot of us back.
it
Y-
is.
But
Yes.
I think spirit was just taking out your knee and your back or whatever and saying, "Hey, dude, you need to be doing this."
Yeah. I mean,
So,
when I think we all have a purpose, right? And I think
yeah.
some of us are resistant to certain things, and it could be the loss of a relationship, it could be the loss of the job, it could be so many things that you have fear in relation to that you just don't
Yeah.
want to let it go because you're clinging to it out of fear, rather than that it's like helping you become who you are. It's actually crippling you so you can't become who you are. So spirit finds a way to kind of steer you in a way, even if it's not fun, to get you to where you need to be.
Can I add, often it's not fun.
Yes.
I think I think
Yes.
I think, Shawn, people think that, oh, when I become awakened or I have all these gifts, it's going to be like unicorns and rainbows and it's going to be it's not fun, but it is there's something that keeps us going because a lot of at the beginning of your story where you heard things or you that happened to me and I just put it aside. I said, oh, this I must be making all this stuff up.
Yeah.
And now fortunately I do listen to it, but and I trust it.
Yeah.
But I think people should know that even if it's uncomfortable, it's it's worth going through because it takes you to the other side of pure authenticity. You are your authentic self now. You're doing what your elders probably did. And did you ever communicate with your elders when this was happening to get some advice from them or
Well, I couldn't
mentorship?
when I lived in Alberta because where I lived, I was not connected to my people, even though there's Indigenous people there. And, I did go to the different reservations, Indigenous reservations for different things out that way. I just never connected to any elders. So when I moved back home, let's say 13 years ago, then I really kind of wanted to embrace my culture so much more. And I asked Spirit to send me people to help me understand who I am as an Indigenous person, to help me have an understanding that my ancestors once had in relation to the work that I'm now connected to. And I know there's a bridge because I've heard stories and I've been taught different things, especially over the years now, that are my ancestors, the Mi'kmaq ancestors had ceremonies to connect the spirit. We still do. And, many of our ceremonies, whether it's a pipe ceremony for prayer or a sweat ceremony to kind of like for healing and conversation with spirit as well, that we had a ceremony way long time ago to connect to receive information from the spirit world. And it was very deliberate. And one of those ceremonies involved a game, um, which is called Waltus. And Waltus is like a maple solid bowl. I have one up there, and it's got some sticks in it. And what they would have did back in the day was they would have filled the bowl full of water. They would have left it out in the moonlight, and they would have done a prayer, probably a pipe ceremony, and left it out there for 4 nights in the moonlight. And then after, and there might have been sweats, there might have been ceremony each day, a sacred fire that they would have had. And then after that, whoever in the community, like in the Mi'kmaq community, that was the person that could see, would sit with the bowl and stare into the water, not looking for like a television in the water, for God's sakes, but it was more of a point of gaze and to allow yourself to kind of see and hear. And that energized you. it created space, and it allowed you to utilize, the energy of grandfather sun and grandmother moon to kind of like, and invite the spirits to deliberately connect to you, and then sit with the bowl and then have visions about where our ancestors should go for their winter camp or summer camp, or what medicine should be picked for a person, or if somebody was struggling in life and needed guidance, they would go to the elder or the medicine person to have guidance in life. So this is something that was part of who we were. This is pre-contact, that we had a ceremony to connect to ancestors and people in spirit to guide us, to help us, to help us move through grief, and to guide us in life the greatest way that they could. And we would have to create space to listen. And it makes sense because I didn't realize I was doing it. It must be like in my genetics unconsciously, maybe, and didn't even really know, because through meditation and just sitting there, getting in certain types of, let's say, mental mind zones that I wasn't really doing on purpose, like typing in my computer, just sitting there kind of mindless. I was creating almost like a void space for spirit to see a space to come in and then say the name Charlie to me, or give me an image, because when I connected people, and I didn't have words to describe clairvoyance, but I knew I was seeing things within my mind's eye. But I've been working on that muscle so much through my meditations that I was reactivating it because it was dormant. And I think that it's within all of us. I don't think it's just Indigenous people. I think it's within all of us. It's innate, but it's actually, let's say, a muscle or skill that is atrophied within us. And we, just like your body, if you can exercise your body and form it and shape it, and you have to work with your spirit. You have to work with your innate inner abilities, and through exercises, so that you can form and shape that in such a way that it's a better at receiving.
I completely agree with that. It's so interesting. Yesterday, I was having a conversation about paranormal. What's paranormal? And I just said, paranormal doesn't really exist because the way you are is normal.
It is,
And
yes,
and so
absolutely.
there's a physicist and he's a consciousness researcher. His name's Tom Campbell, and he talks about this, and he says that we are programmed to do remote viewing, to have telepathy, to speak to our loved ones beyond the veil. We're programmed that's how we operate, yet something has covered that. So you, Shawn, are living life in the normal and the way that we're supposed to be. I feel like I am too. And there's dust over it. I always say, like, there's thick dust. And so you are this beautiful person out there that it's helping us kind of, get the duster and bring that beautiful diamond to the surface, because we all have this ability. And I know that there are people that say, oh, I'm not psychic, I can't do that. But of course, they've had moments where they knew somebody was going to call them on the phone, or they were thinking about a loved one, and they see their name somewhere. Of course. Can,
Mm.
can you share? Oh, there's so much, Shawn. I have notes on you. I usually don't. But I have notes because your book is so fantastic. In fact, in the forward, it says, I want to share this. This book will help to heal broken hearts and offer hope to many. I can't think of anything better than that. But I do feel that is exactly what this book does. Can you talk about ceremony? Because I love the way you talk about ceremony and saging, and how it's not the sage that's doing this. And can you share
Right.
the importance of
We have
that?
tools, right? Like in Indigenous culture, we have different tools that we would use to connect to spirit. And it's not the tool. So it's not the pipe. It's you activating on the prayer through the pipe, utilizing the smoke within the pipe and your words and the things that you say with spirit. And the ceremony is just the reciprocal energy of relation, how you approach it. So you approach it from a specific way, but doesn't mean that you only say these words and do this at this time. No, there's a part where you just stop, even though it's non-scripted within the pipe ceremony, that you actually start to speak with spirit yourself and ask for help for a person. You ask for guidance for yourself. So there's actually, it's a tool utilized for prayer. And I think a lot of people don't understand that, because I know a lot of people that aren't non-Indigenous think of pipe, they think of a peace pipe. Well, peace is a prayer that you have with the pipe, but it doesn't mean that you just turn the pipe around, point it up at the stars, and point it at Mother Earth. No, but with like just like with smudging, and I have a lot of people that message me about smudging and say, listen, there's energy in my home, and I don't know what to do, and I've smudged, and it's not changing. And I'm like, well, how are you approaching it? Because you are the catalyst for the smudge to extend within your home. The smudge is an extension of your prayer. It's an extension of your words. And what do you feel and think inside your spirit when you're using it? That is energy that you're extending into your home. If you walk around with fear thinking this isn't going to work, what have you extended into your home? A thing that's not going to work.
And you've extended fear into your home.
Right. Absolutely.
I really do think that as saging your home, and if you're fearful that, I got to do this because it's got to work, I think you're bringing more fear into your home. It's intention. You could take this cup and do it. It's the intention. It's not the item itself, but I do love the ceremony of the item. I do love that, and infusing it with a frequency.
But just like, and I'll give you an analyzation of this. Have you ever heard of Dr. Emoto?
Of course. I studied Dr. Emoto, and there's a perfect example.
Right. Now, he uses intentions and puts it into water. So can water be holy? Yes. Does the priest that blesses the water, is he thinking about how he doesn't like people and is upset with the day, and while he's blessing the water, does that have an effect on the water as he blesses it? It does. It changes the molecular structure of it, because when it's frozen, you can see how it's different. But if you hold, space for unconditional love, peace, kindness, compassion, and that's what you put into your water when you're blessing it, then the water is truly blessed. It's holy. And then when you spray the water around their home, whether it's a mist or you put it on your wall or you put it upon yourself, then it's holding that space and power within the water. You can see it physically through the freezing of the water itself. Now, smudge in Indigenous culture, there's different elements you can use in relation to your ceremony, your work. So smudge also holds water vapor and holds smoke. And when you hold that energy and waft it to the room in a clockwise motion as the sun, because we always do things in Indigenous culture in a clockwise way, because it's the way that the sun goes through the sky, even though that it's the earth spinning counterclockwise to make it look like it's going clockwise through the sky. We still do everything clockwise as the sun moves, as the light moves. And then we speak our prayer words and, into the smudge. And just like the water, it holds that energy.
Right.
So when you leave, the energy of the smoke is still lingering in the space, and it cleanses it.
Yeah, it gives me chills. I'm going to share hopefully a short story with you. When I got my master's, and it was in cultural anthropology, folklore, and dance ethnology. It was a combined interdisciplinary. My professor, he was Caucasian, but he had been adopted by Navajos. He took me to Montana, and we were in somebody's home, and it was several different tribes. And I was there, and they were drumming and chanting. Shawn, I will never forget this, because, and they were passing peyote around, which I did not do, because I think that would have just taking me over the edge, because I was so moved. So with the drumming and the chanting, I was sobbing uncontrollably. It hit every cell of my body, and it was also familiar to me, and it felt like home to me. So I do know of a past life where I've experienced this. So it was the intention within that room. It was the love and the compassion and the oneness and the connection that moved everybody. And we were all connected. We were all different, but we were all connected. It was one of the most beautiful experiences of my life. And I was so honored to have been gifted that. But I just want to share that, because it's what you say. It is intention. It's the intention behind
it is
what you do.
Because there's Indigenous ceremonies, right? But there's ceremonies in all cultures.
And we're all indigenous, aren't we? Because at some
Right.
point we were indigenous.
We're indigenous from somewhere in the world, right? Because
Exactly.
our ancestors have come from one place in the world at some point. And if you look at the
100%.
big picture, and what we also say in indigenous culture is we always say in Mi'kmaq, we say Emsanogama, which means all my relations. That means we are
Yeah.
all related, and not just with the human nation, but we're related to the plants and Mother Earth and Grandmother Moon and Grandfather Sun. There's
Absolutely.
no separation in this. We're all connected.
Animals know this.
They
Animals know
do. They
this
absolutely do. Yes, the
without,
plants know this.
of course. I mean, I talk to everything, but because everything has a conscious and we're all connected,
Yes.
we need each other. And then you had Sam. You talked about Sam in the book.
Yeah.
Sam, you had an Uncle Sam, right? Is that
Yes, I
what you
do. I
said?
have an uncle Sam that lives in Newfoundland. He's not a fisherman. He's retired now. He was a guy that I fished with for the year there.
But then you
But
had Sam, your guide.
yeah, I have a guide named Sam as well. And when I was very young, I had vague memories, and this is where I these memories came greater to me later in life when I remembered him again.
Mm.
Because as a young boy, I had experiences that I didn't know were supernatural or paranormal. They weren't, they were just normal. I had an imaginary friend named Sam that I played with, and he would just stand there. And I think he would chat to me sometimes, being a little boy of 3 to 4 years old, up to 5, I think. And he would tell me things, and I'd argue with my mom about what Sam would tell me, and my mom would always say, "I don't know who the hell Sam is because Sam, is not real, and you have an Uncle Sam, and Sam lives in Newfoundland, and I just talked to him, so I know he didn't tell you this." And I'm like, "Well, I could, because I'm confused because I don't understand how she doesn't know who Sam is." And I remember when I was young, standing, and I remember the moment that he left me, and not left me it like in the sense of like watching over me as a spiritual guide, but left me in the physical sense because I couldn't see him anymore like the way I did. And I was downstairs playing with little cars in front of my washer and dryer, in my mom's home where she still lives.
Oh.
And I was down there playing on the floor, and for whatever reason, he was standing almost like right in front of the washer. And he explained to me that he had to leave. And I'm like, okay, well, where are you going? He goes, well, I'm really going nowhere. Just, you're not going to be able to see me the way you see me anymore. And he had a long white robe, I remember, and like dirty blonde, kind of curly hair, kind of brownish a little bit, kind of piercing blue eyes, very Caucasian fellow,
Mhm.
but super nice man, just kind. And, again, I would always love the things he would tell me because I love to argue with my mom about them, especially about religion sometimes. But so anyway, he left, and I saw this light open up, almost like a doorway just kind of opened and shut. And it was just like in a moment, he was gone. And I'm like, Sam, Sam, where are you? Like, Sam, can you hear me? Sam, are you here? And I remember crying, and I went upstairs to my mom. I left my cars, and I'm like, "Oh my God, Sam's gone. He left me." And I told her, and she goes, "Well, I don't think my mom minded too much because I mean, Sam would like I'd be arguing with her about what Sam said this, Sam said that, right?" But he went, and again, when I was much later in life, and I'd forgotten about him. This is the thing, even though I had those memories,
Mhm.
they were so early in life that I couldn't even remember them anymore. And it wasn't until later in life that I started to really work at my spirit and connecting to my guides again. And I didn't even know who my guides were. I didn't say, "Hey, Sam, can you connect to me?" I just want to connect to my guides. And then I did this meditation for like 2 to 3 weeks straight of connecting to your spirit guide. And I was getting kind of discouraged, thinking that it wasn't going to happen. And then all of a sudden somebody reached out and grabbed my hand, and I felt their hand on mine. And even though I saw them in my mind, and it was like, I don't know how else to describe it, but my whole body twinkled.
Mm.
Like it was just like endorphins, like all these endorphins going
Oh,
all at once. I twinkled like a star for a moment. And you could say it almost was enlightened in a
yeah.
moment. And it just like, I was like sparkly. And I was like, oh my God. And then I heard, I'm Sam, don't you remember me? And I'm like, oh my God, Sam, I remember you. It was like I remember him from when I was a kid. I remember him, and it was like a distant memory that somehow wasn't there anymore, but it all come flooding back. That he was with me and that he's always been with me. And he said that he'd reconnect to me one day. And have I and I've never really seen him in the way that I have back then. Because he wore a robe all the time.
What's with the robe? You said your
I
dad
don't
had a white robe. I have
Yeah.
a guy that wears it's a more of a tan robe with a hood,
Yeah.
and I can't really see his face, but he's very kind of pragmatic, you know. There's not a lot of humor in him, but others have great humor. But he's
Right.
very, very wise. So I'm just wondering what
Absolutely.
the robe.
I don't know, like, because I remember when my dad came and he told me about the robe that he was wearing. He says, "Don't worry, you'll get used to it. We all wear things like this over here." I'm like, I couldn't figure it out.
Interesting.
Like it was almost like from Roman times type of thing, like way back in
Yeah.
the day. And I'm just like, oh, why would you like? Because my dad was like a hunter, was in the Navy. He wore,
Yeah.
his shirts and his green pants all the time, like his work pants, like just not what I thought my dad be wearing, which kind
It's
of like surprised me. But
it's
I think a lot
interesting.
of people in spirit world wear things like this. I don't know why.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can't answer. I think that maybe I guess we can't walk around naked all the time if we're going to appear
No,
to
it's
people.
probably
So
easy. It's super
it's
easy.
probably
Throw on a
easier
robe.
and it's more comfortable. It really doesn't weigh anything because there's no gravity
No.
or anything over there. So it's not like you're carrying this around. It's just something. It's I think we'll call it a kind of a general covering.
Exactly. Well, I've heard other people talk about their guides wearing this monk-like tannish robe, and I go, "Oh my, that's mine. Mine does
Yeah.
the same thing." It's really interesting. And then your uncle Rob,
Yes.
that was an incredible story. Could
Right.
you share that
Well, I
briefly?
mean,
And
so well after my stepdad Larry passed, because my mom remarried another man, Larry, and he unfortunately had cancer, and I was on that journey with them, and it was a gift. It was a real gift to be part of that journey, and so at his funeral, Larry's funeral, my uncle Rob was there, my great uncle Rob, because it was my mom's uncle, but it was like really my great uncle, and he was there. He looked very ill. He was in a wheelchair. He had an oxygen mask on. He was carrying around his oxygen thing, and he looked like he could die the next day. And I was like, why? I mean, I went up to him and I said, Rob, I mean, so nice of you to come. I'm really happy to see you, but like, why did you come? Like, you're not well. Like, you should be home. And he's like, you know, Sean, I really have to get used to this because I'm going to be making my journey home pretty soon. And I'm like, well, I'm sorry to hear that. And because he had lung cancer and he could hardly breathe. And he said, well, I said, Rob, it was really nice to see you. And I don't think I'll probably see you again before you go. But if you could do me a favor, though, I mean, when you make your journey, tell Larry I say hi and tell him how much I love him. Tell my dad I say hi. And I said, one other thing, I said, could you try to, like, in some weird way, could you visit me? Could you just come visit me when you make your journey? And, and he goes, Sean, if the good Lord lets me do any of this, I will come visit you. I said, great. I'd really appreciate that. And then I said my goodbye and I never seen him again. He passed away, I heard. I actually didn't hear that he passed away. This is where it kind of gets really kind of cool. Because I was then in Nova Scotia delivering the mail. And I was on a street called Yonge Street. And I went to go into this building. There was nobody there. I walked up to the steps and I went to go grab the door handle. And somebody jumped out and grabbed the door handle before I could grab it and open the door. And I'm looking at this guy and I'm like, that is so weird. You look like Uncle Rob, but you look like you're like 30 years younger than what I've seen him and healthy and well. And I'm thinking, and he's just smiling. He's got this big teethy grin and he's just smiling like a Cheshire cat, and I'm just like just amazed by seeing this man, thinking about my Uncle Rob, and I'm wondering how he's doing. And I go in to go put the mail in. I just walked through the door and my phone rings. And it's my mom. And she goes, you're not going to guess who I just got a call from. I just found out, Rob passed away. And I'm like, oh my God. So I didn't even stop. I didn't even put the mail in. I went outside. I'm looking down the street. I'm looking both ways, and he was nowhere to be found. Like the man that was there just vanished. But I
it's
know it
just,
was him. I know it was
of
him.
course it was. It's just beautiful. And my dad passed the next day. I'm driving to the grocery store and he was in the passenger seat next to me. I could, you know, it wasn't like I saw him, but there's a knowing that he, with that smile, and he always wore a hat. And I could, Dad, what are you doing here? This is awesome. It
Yeah.
was just, it's so comforting. Shawn, what would you suggest to all of us out there that we want to increase our intuitive abilities. We want to connect. We want to have this, just this wonderful feeling that this isn't all there is.
Yeah.
What do you suggest that we start with to
Well,
get into that?
I teach a course called Spirit Talker Tribe, which I take people on a year-long program of helping people kind of like step into this more fully. But module one in my course of 12 modules, which is 12 months, is prayer. And it's not necessarily prayer like saying Our Father or Hail Mary. It's having conversations with your people, with your ancestors, with your loved ones, with your guides, with your angels, just speaking to them, inviting them back into your life, to give them permission to let you know that they're around you and that they can guide you and to help you to become aware that they are there. And one of the things I do in module one is I have everybody in my course write a letter and call it a letter to the universe, letter to the creator. And this letter is, you know, where you're struggling in life and you really need help. And you or you want to help someone else that you know is struggling. You're good in life, but you really want the creator to really help someone. I get them to write this letter and be as clear and as detailed and from the heart center that they can be. And then what I do is I ask them to go into the forest, somewhere where they can be alone, and just speak clearly and loudly from your heart. Just speak openly with your words, not your inside voice, but the words that you speak. And if you have some sage, light it. If you have a candle, light it. If you want to have a little fire to do this, light it. I mean, it's really up to you because it's your ceremony. But it starts with your words of invitation and connection, and in you know, with spirit. And that's really where the best place is to start.
That's
And
beautiful.
even invite them to help you to understand more, even ask them to help you to open up more, ask them to connect to you in your dreams more, to inspire
Yeah.
you more, to allow synchronicity to show up in your life in the most amazing ways. Just that's where I tell people to start for month one. Month two is all about meditation and reactivating that part of your mind that is atrophied to see again, because it's not seeing with these, it's seeing with your heart and mind together, and allowing yourself through visualized meditations, even if it's for brief moments, to do a lot of meditations, which I have in the course. And I also teach people about one thing that I think is really important if you're going to develop as a spirit talker, as a psychic medium thing. And it's an exercise that I train predominantly. But what I do is I say, I want people to take a new object every day.
Mhm.
And then whatever, let's just say, because I have an oracle card deck too. Let's just draw a card out for fun.
Fun.
So I drew this before. So this is a card that I have in the deck. It's called the Milky Way Spirit Road. But look at the card and then and see it, you know, for what it all is. And then turn your head away, close your eyes, and hold the image of the card in your mind for as long as you can. Do it with your eyes closed, and then do it with your eyes open. See it. Again, not without looking at it. If you have to look at it one more time, then look at it. But then stare at the table kind of blankly in a meditative state with your eyes open, and then visualize the card in your mind again. And I like to say it's not your imagination, it's your imagination. You're restarting the images within your mind. And then when you start reactivating that part of your brain, you're creating the possibility for when spirit does reach out to you. You know, because if you work on that part of your brain, you'll be speaking to someone, and all of a sudden, the image of something flashes in your mind that you don't know why it's there, that somehow it just popped in there. And then when you tell the person, it's very pertinent to them. And then that starts this kind of like this process of like connection, because then it allows you, when little things start happening, it like what happened to me. it invigorates and excites you to want to learn more and go deeper and to train more, to develop more, to grow more, to work those psychic muscles so that you can become greater and more skilled at this. And then it becomes natural. It becomes like a fluent language, as opposed to thinking that this is like something that you can't do. This is something that's in you, that's always been part. It is you. You are spirit.
Exactly.
You are spirit, and you've lived many lifetimes.
It's a
And
magic.
it's just remembering who you are in that conversation that you've had through every lifetime.
It's clearing the space, just allowing the space, because we have so much going on in our minds. Speaking of synchronicity, when I hike in the beautiful mountains, when I'm in California, I hike in the beautiful mountains of Santa Rosa, and it's very important to me this time. And I'm listening to you. You know this, but I'm listening to you on a podcast. So I'm hiking, I'm listening to you. I go, oh, this guy's so great. I really want him on my podcast. And then a number pops up, a text. I get a text message, and it's a number. I've never seen this number. And I said, who is this? And they said, oh, this is Shawn Leonard. And I went, oh my God. And Shawn, I left you, right? I was so excited. I left you a voice text message. I sounded like a crazy person, and I know that I did. Going, oh my God, I have this degree, and I did all this stuff because I was so excited. But that was synchronicity, and it's always on this trail that I get incredible messaging. I met my guides for the first time, and that was just beautiful synchronicity. I'm listening to you on a podcast, and you text message me. Well, that was just awesome.
That is awesome. I think that's a sacred space for you, obviously, right?
It's very much a sacred space. I cannot believe we're at the end here. I do have questions. I have so many more questions. So I really hope that you'll come back. And you have a new book about animal totems.
Yeah, it's coming out on October 21st. Heyo's Publishing. It's called Walking with Your Spirit Animal Totems.
I have a million questions about that. Can you come back and talk about that? I really, or do you want to share just something about that right now?
I would love to talk about it. I could share one story very quickly because, part of my culture, we're connected to the animal nation. We actually have a teaching, which is in my oracle card deck that I share. It's called the 7 Grandfather Teachings. And it talks about different animalistic qualities like wolf, humility, bear, and courage, and honesty, and sabe or Bigfoot. There's different turtle truth. There's different medicines that come from different animals. But I feel like there's an animal that we're deeply connected to, probably about 4 different animals, I feel, not just one. There might be one profound one that you're deeply connected to, but I feel at different stages of life, because in Indigenous culture, we have different stages, because we talk about the medicine wheel in our culture and the different stages of life, from infancy to youth to adult to elder. And I feel like at different stages of life, just like you may pick up a new guide, depending on when I was young, I had Sam. As I grew, I got Victoria, and then I have Eliza as well as a new guide that is connected to me. And I feel like there'll be another guide that makes himself known to me at some point when I reach the elder stage of my life. But my Indigenous name is White Eagle Spirit Talker, so I have a very kind of distinct and profound connection to eagles, and there's a lot of that in the book, Spirit Talker. But I also have a very deep connection to the buffalo, the white buffalo, and I have a deep connection to the polar bear. And I think the polar bear story is probably the most profound. And to kind of sum it up right fast, I had this dream where I was running through a field one night, and I didn't even know I was connected to the polar bear. And these 7 shadows were chasing me. And I was trying to get away, and I did write about it in Spirit Talker, that I was trying to get away from these 7 shadows, and I was running for my life through this field in my dream, mind you. And I saw these 7 polar bears walk out of the woods. And I was like, okay, well, this is weird. Why is polar bears in the woods in the first place? And then I was like, okay, they started running towards us. And I'm like, okay, I have to run polar bears and these shadow people now. And I'm running the other way for my life, going, oh my God. And then I realized I'm not going to be able to do it. I surrendered. I got on my knees and waited for the polar bears to eat me. And then what happened was all 7 polar bears ran past me. And each shadow they would pounce upon, and they just kind of dissolved, disintegrated. And they turned around and they walked into one bear, and the bear stared at me in the eyes. And I remember waking up in this kind of like fright, going, "Oh my God, the polar bear wasn't there to hurt me. The polar bear was there to protect me." So from something that I was going to go through in life, or things, situations I was facing, that the polar bear has a power, spiritual medicine that's been helping me and protecting me that I didn't know was there. So I put out to the spirit world that I would love to have a profound connection to this great bear. And I said, "Send me a polar bear claw." And I said, "I don't know how you're going to do it. This is where your words are so important when you speak with spirit. Creator, my ancestors, the great spirit of the bear, send me a claw so that I can carry your medicine with me in life." And I let it go. And then eventually, like many months down the road, I get a little package in the mail. It's from a lady named Barbara Kent Bishop, who is from Newfoundland, and went to Labrador and met with an Inuk elder. And she was in a ceremony, and he gifted her 2 claws. They said, "Listen, Barbara, this one is for you. But this other claw I'm gifting you is meant to go to someone else. And you have to gift it to this person." And he goes, "Well, who should I gift it to?" He goes, "You'll know who you need to give it to." So she goes home and she thinks like, "Oh, I think I'll send this to Shawn Leonard. He's been such a profound person for me in life. I'm going to send him this claw." So I open up the package with a little note saying, "Shawn, I hope that you accept this gracious gift of this polar bear claw, but this Inuk elder told me that I had to gift it to somebody, and the only person I could think of was you." So I got that claw and I wear it. I wear it today. I wear it every day.
Mm.
And then shortly after that, I got a little piece of fur from someone else of a polar bear. Somebody gifted me a rug. And then somebody just gifted me another claw. And I have another rug over here that's sitting in my pool table. So I have 5 different parts of polar bears.
Mm.
Like, my prayer has been profoundly answered. But I still feel like there's 2 more that's going to come to me. Because I think the spirits of those 7 bears that were with me,
Yeah.
they're all giving me pieces of themselves so that I can carry all their medicine with me as I move forward in life. Now I have 5 different parts. I still expect 2 more to come to me in some profound and most amazing way as I move forward.
Can't wait to hear. Cannot wait to hear. It's a fantastic story. Shawn, well, we're towards the end. I do have questions I asked, but I think what I'm going to do is just, I am going to ask a couple of them. One of them is, what strategy do you go to if you're in a bit of mental distress? What is your go-to to kind of calm down your sympathetic to your parasympathetic nervous system?
Well, it depends where I am. If I'm home, I have my own spiritual place, like just like you do for the trail that you go on. I'll go to that space and work on mindfulness. If I'm out in the world, let's just say I'm on vacation, I'm facing some dilemma, then I'm forced to take that mindfulness to where I am. And I look for a space where I am. And I just went to Hawaii actually. So, and I wasn't in any type of situation, but every morning what I did when I was there is me and my wife went for a walk, but I went for a walk down the beach in Hawaii, and it was amazing. It was beautiful, and in Maui, but I don't think about anything except where I am.
Mhm.
I listen for the waves, the birds, the people that are there, and the splashing of the ocean, and people playing in the water. I'm present. So when I'm going through something in life, I go to a space like that. I ask for help. Help me, Creator. Help me, my guides. If there's something that you can do to kind of help me with a certain situation or this or that, that's my sacred space wherever I am. And then I just give myself presence and mindfulness. I don't dwell on it. I don't think about it all the time, because our squirrely brain can get out of control, and it like leaves us in an imbalanced space as opposed to balanced space of life. Now I have my own little space down in the woods that I go down here that is little. I even built a deck there in the woods that I can go and just sit on my chair and just listen to the trees and the wind and the birds, the crickets, and sometimes the mosquitoes, for God's sakes. But I'm just there. And if I need to speak when I need to speak, I give myself a time to say it through my ceremony of speaking with my ancestors, my guides, etc. Maybe my personal angels. And then I just be present. And then I
Beautiful.
don't carry it with me when I leave. I don't go into the car and driving thinking about my problem. I don't go to Costco stressing about it, because then I'm carrying the problem. I'm giving energy to the problem. rather than giving it energy to the peace that I need to feel in my life to approach life in a good way.
Perfect. Beautiful. I do that too. I mean, nature is my space to just regroup. Um, this is a sentence I'd like you to complete. In the past I was, and now I am.
That's a good question. In the past, I was unconscious.
Oh,
I was unconsciously aware of who I was and how I fit within the world. And now I'm aware of who I am, and the greater picture is always unfolding in the most amazing ways.
well, I think that's pretty perfect. And oh, Shawn, I can't thank you enough. If people want to connect with you, where can they go?
Well, you can go to my website, Shawn, SHAWN, hyphen, the middle line, Leonard, LEONARD.com. And my email address is there. There's links to my Facebook, my Instagram, and all that. So my website is probably the best place to go. And when you're there, please sign up for my email list, because I have a couple free gifts. I got a meditation to connect to your spirit guide, and I got a 5 spiritual tips recommendation for people so that they can kind of set the intention to kind of be more connected themselves.
That's perfect. And with that, I'm just going to shout out to our listeners and viewers that if you like the podcast, please feel free to review testimonials, 5 stars. I just started doing this, Shawn, but I do know how it's so important. And I read everything, and oh my gosh, it opens my heart in a way that I can't even explain. You know that because it's the same for you. Do this for Shawn as well. We're here to kind of support everybody, to support each other. We're not alone. We have each other, and you're never alone anyway. Shawn, also all of your links will be in the show notes. So people, if they couldn't write all that down, they'll have it in the show notes. Shawn, it has been an honor, a pleasure to have you here. I could be talking to you for the next 25 hours, which we're doing it again. And I appreciate your time. Yeah, I just loved this conversation.
Well, I appreciate you and the work that you're doing, Sandy, and thank your audience for listening. And why we both do these things is not for ourselves. This is to get out there to help people understand who they are in a greater way. And that's what drives me in life. I mean, writing a book isn't like a way to get rich in life. It's not.
Definitely
you might get
not.
a little bit of money from it. Hopefully you break even if you self-publish, which I've done in the past. But it's really sharing your knowledge so you can help shift the world in the most amazing and great ways. And, I know there's medicine in all of us. Yeah. And I think it's meant to be shared. So share when you can, share what you know, and share it with a good and an open heart. And so thank you for just being present.
Thank you, Shawn. Until next time, take care. And my heart is full.
Thank you. Thank you, Sandy.
Okay, bye-bye.